Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
Most are afraid of unknown depths, skirting shores thinking world flat. I'm with the island girls in celebration of new religion. Nobody led me or said this way. I sailed alone on makeshift raft with wind as companion. Fate for deliverance, confidence enough to assess new disposition. Seekers of lost paradise may seem fools to those who never sought the other worlds. Welcome to Momentary Zen with Zen Garcia. Visit www.fallenangels.tv. You're listening to Revolution Radio.
Welcome, readers, listeners, and viewers from across America and around the world. February 6th, Saturday, 2010. It's 5 p.m. and this is a live show, and I give thanks to you for joining us for another episode where we delve into things, all things esoteric. And today we're going to cover a really a little known about book called The Occult Technology of Power. And I have as co-host with me today Kevin Unterberger, who has taken a sabbatical for personal reasons, and he's going to be joining me over the next course of several weeks to cover not only this topic, but also the protocols of the learned elders of Zion, which we will go into over the course of the next couple of weeks as well. Kevin, would you like to say hello to the listening audience?
Yes, I just want to say Shabbat Shalom to everybody, and Zen, I'm very happy to be back in the swing of things here. Although I'm a little hamstrung here, I'm without my computer and without my phone, so if the folks out there are having a little hard time hearing me, it's because I'm on my cell phone. So I'm going to fly by the seat of my pants here tonight with you, but I'm sure as one who's been woken up by our Savior, Yahushua, our Savior, Messiah, that I'll be able to give my opinion succinctly here on the subject we're about to endeavor in, and it's really nice to be with you as always, and to battle our enemy as we know it here in these last days, and I enjoy being here.
Well, it's always a blessing to have you as part of the conversation and the dialogue. It definitely seems like when we do shows together during the course of our conversation that some topics or some points, very relevant points, come up which I would not probably have touched upon. And so it's always a blessing to have you here, Kevin. And, of course, as a friend and co-host of the show, you're always welcome to join me on any of the topics that I do cover, because as you say, the Lord has blessed you in discernment, as I give thanks that he has blessed me with the similar discernment. So we're just going to serve the Lord here today, and as foot washers, try to wake up the people and bring them to knowledge and understanding about what's going on in the world, why things are. It seems like every day more criminality, open criminality, whether it's from government, politicians, corporations. It's every day in your face, and we are definitely, everybody can sense it, moving towards that new world order that the Book of Daniel and the biblical prophecies have forever long warned us about. And before we go into the occult technology of power, a quote from Thomas Jefferson: "If the American people ever allow private banks to control the issue of their currency, first by inflation and then by deflation, the banks and corporations that will grow up around them will deprive the people of all property until their children wake up homeless on the continent their fathers conquered." And is that not a prophetic statement by one of our presidents, early presidents? And would you like to comment on that, Kevin? And then we'll go into some of this.
Amen, brother. He hit the nail on the head there. And I when I hearken back to some of our early presidents, like you just spoke of there with Jefferson and Andrew Jackson, and many of them, Washington, even our first president, you look at some of their writings, and they knew that all along that they knew the underlying shadow government that was infiltrating even back then, that what Washington spoke about with this frog in the kettle effect, this slow boiling and this drip by drip effect of how they're taking over and subverting us from the very start. It's very eerie. And when you first made me aware of this book, The Occult Technology of Power, when I talked to you on the phone the other day, it's not like I'm surprised by this writing, Zen, but it's like you're reading the devil's directions for these men who do things for power, and it's just my heart sinks because so many people, I think, are really fooled by who they're really following, and I think they believe that they're serving the betterment of man when in fact they are really being deceived, and it's very disheartening. And when I read this, I struggle sometimes for humanity, but we have to stay strong, and we have to stand on the wall and scream and blow the whistle on what's going on and letting people know. I mean, the Lord told us that there's nothing new under the sun. This is an old game, and it's just coming to its end game now, and we're watching the culmination of it. Just like the Bible is the story of man throughout time. We see in the Book of Revelation the culmination of all of these things coming together, the end game, and it's just. When I started reading this, then I was like set back on, wow, what do these guys know? And I think as we go on through this series, we're going to show that this is nothing new under the sun. Many, many people have been, and enlightened men have been talking about this system that's been in place for many, many years.
Absolutely. This is nothing new, as you said. This has been an old plot that's been diabolically conceived and orchestrated over centuries and centuries. And even though people are just now waking up to the New World Order, and for those that don't know what the New World Order is, the New World Order is a diabolical plan created by the financial elite in order, and I would say Satan, of course, as the head, as the eye at the top of that pyramid, in order to destroy the national sovereignty of the governments of the world through economic blackmail and world conflict, with the goal of enslaving humankind in a one-world fascist dictatorship type government. And we can see the very real underpinnings of that now. And for those that don't believe that this is something that has evolved over centuries and decades, a quote from a New York City mayor, John F. Hyland, in 1922. He said, "The real menace of our republic is this invisible government which, like a giant octopus, sprawls its slimy length over city, state, and nation. And like the octopus of real life, it operates under cover of a self-created screen. At the head of this octopus are the Rockefeller, Standard Oil interests, and a small group of powerful banking houses, generally referred to as international bankers. The little coterie of powerful international bankers virtually run the United States government for their own selfish purposes, and they practically control both political parties." Now, this book, The Occult Technology of Power, some say is a book, it's anonymous, and nobody knows who it was really written for, but many do speculate that it was written by the Rockefellers for his son, who he, bequeathed his entire empire to. And when you read and hear about the occult technology of power, it seems to fit that accordingly. But before we go into that, we want to touch upon the recent Supreme Court decision allowing corporations to openly be involved financially in the American political process. And if that's not open fascism, I don't know what is. But just a statement from Ralph Nader, and then I'm going to get you to comment on this too, Tiff. Ralph Nader said the day after this particular decision was passed, the 5-4 decision by the United States Supreme Court in Citizens United versus Federal Election Commission shreds the fabric of our already weakened democracy by allowing corporations to more completely dominate our corrupted electoral process. It is outrageous that corporations already attempt to influence or bribe our political candidates through their political action committees, which solicit employees and shareholders for donations. With this decision, corporations can now directly pour vast amounts of corporate money through independent expenditures into the electoral swamp already flooded with corporate campaign PAC contribution dollars. Without approval from their shareholders, corporations can reward or intimidate people running for office at the local, state, and national levels. I'll get you to comment on this, Kev, and then we'll talk a little bit more about this.
Well, Zen, that statement that you just made right there is, I call it lobbyism. and between you and me and many of the listeners out there, we've become aware of this particular way of doing business in Washington and through the political realms that we see around us, that this is really nothing that they haven't been doing. They're just now putting their official stamp of approval on this as to make it not illegal. They've been doing this for a long, long time, and they are just now so powerful and so bold that they're not afraid to put their official stamp on it. And you and I both know that means that these particular people who are in politics, for the majority's sake, I'm not saying everyone, but that they can be bought and paid for by the highest bidder. That means that these corporations were able to be able to put forth their programs and their initiatives with the stamp of approval, and by paying a politician's campaign funds and many, many other things that we don't know about to get their agenda pushed through. And it's nothing more than the further consolidation. As you spoke of fascism, for most people who don't understand what fascism is when your country is run by, another name for it can be corporatism, which is what we're seeing here. What we're seeing in our country is these corporations can become so big that they can't possibly fail, but all of a sudden they do fail. And where do they come from? Come for help. They come back to the taxpayers to further drain us. So you see that it's a system that's not made to help anything. While they say they're trying to help it, but they're really further degenerating our sovereignty and our power as a republic. To further centralize the government. All of the policies that Barack Obama and all the other past presidents of the past 20, 30 years have been there to tear down the establishment under the guise of they're there to help. If you look at Obama and his administration now, everything's a crisis. You have the healthcare crisis, you have the economic crisis, you have this crisis, everything's a crisis, and he's going to fix them all. Meanwhile, his real agenda is not to fix any of them, but to bring them to a giant head where everything pops, and then the few select people control everything. And you look at it right now, and that's where we're headed. So it's nothing new under the sun. Our Father told us all about what these evil men are doing, and our power lies in the knowledge of us getting it out to the people so we can rally around and possibly stem the tide. And let these people know that they're going to have to change tactics, that we're on to them. But they control things so fundamentally from top to bottom, and it's going to be a really hard battle. So we got our work cut out for us.
Absolutely, absolutely. But, the Lord said, my people are killed for lack of knowledge. And so we are trying to bring forth the information so that people can protect themselves and their family members from the crash that is coming, because it is being engineered, and you can see the house of cards that is America is collapsing all around us. Just a few figures. The Center for Responsive Politics reported that last year the U.S. Chamber of Commerce spent $144 million to influence Congress and state legislators. The center also reported big lobbying expenditures by the Pharmaceutical Research and Manufacturers of America, which spent $26 million in 2009 alone. Drug companies like Pfizer, Amgen, and Eli Lilly also poured tens of millions of dollars into federal lobbying in 2009. The health insurance industry trade group, America's Health Insurance Plan, also spent several million dollars lobbying Congress. No wonder single-payer health insurance, supported by the majority of people, doctors and nurses, isn't moving in Congress. Energy companies like ExxonMobil and Chevron, also big spenders. No wonder we have a national energy policy that is pro-fossil fuel and that does little to advance renewable energy or clean energy. No wonder we have the best Congress money can buy. And we're going to go now into the occult technology of power, but before we do that, I want to make one quote about the protocols of the learned elders of Zion. When we talk about that, you will see how all of what we're talking about and speculating about right now ties in completely with those protocols, and how this that we are facing as a crisis now, as a nation, as a bankrupt nation, we're going to see states fold from budget crises. There's not enough money to bail out all these states. And so what's going to happen is you see America being disintegrated into a third world nation so that we can then be merged into a world government. The final comment from Kevin on this, and then we're going to go into the occult technology of power.
Yeah, I think, Zen, when I was reading this, what I want people to understand is the Illuminati, as we call them, or Satan's workers of iniquity here, to bring us to a one-world totalitarian state throughout the world, is not one of, they don't need to own everything. What they like to do is control everything. So don't think that all the people that own these businesses and own all of these corporations are the ones that are evil. The ones that make policies and that control what they're able to do and how they're able to do it are the true puppet masters of this system. So don't let yourself be fooled by pointing fingers in the directions of specific corporations and companies. Just take into mind that it's the perfection of their work as to be the controllers of that, not the specific companies. They don't necessarily need to own everything. I just wanted to make that clear then.
Absolutely. This particular book, The Occult Technology of Power, it mentions a Carol Quigley. In each one of the chapters is written by a different one of the advisors of this particular anonymous individual. But Carol Quigley wrote a book called Tragedy and Hope, where he exposed the kind of underpinnings of the New World Order and the global elitists and how they work through the economics of the world to deceive and to manipulate and to create crashes and steal the wealth of the populations of the world. But a quote from him: "There does exist and has existed for a generation an international Anglophile network which operates to some extent in the way the radical right believes the communists act. I know of the operations of this network because I have studied it for 20 years and was permitted for 2 years in the early 1960s to examine its papers and secret records. I have no aversion to it or to most of its instruments. I have objected both in the past and recently to a few of its policies, but in general, my chief difference of opinion is that it wishes to remain unknown, and I believe its role in history is significant enough that it should be known." And so That was from Carol Quigley. And Carol Quigley is specifically mentioned in this particular book, The Occult Technology of Power. Just a little bit about the book before going into it, because it's so relevant. This little book, The Occult Technology of Power, is probably the most succinct statement of who they are, who rules, who pulls the strings, who picks the winners, who precipitates the wars, who commits the treachery, most important, who steals the wealth. The transcriber, the anonymous person that wrote this book, he calls himself the transcriber, locates the dead center of maximum political, economic sleaze in America and the world and delivers a smart bomb on the target. The book conveys the instruction of a man in full under auspices of his father, the leader of the dynasty. And again, I said most people speculate that this is John D. Rockefeller passing his empire onto David Rockefeller, but again, that's not known. Considering the Rockefeller family, through banking, business, foundations, and other holdings, controls trillions of dollars in human wealth, the pattern is apt. The father introduces his soon-to-be supreme financial politician, successor to the mysteries of how the dynasty. By the way, the Rockefeller dynasty is a predominant component in what I typically call the cartel, of sometimes the beast of the empire, exercises its nearly complete control of society. It's a quick read. It's a very short book, and somebody can read it in a day. It's a difficult book to find, but you can locate it on the internet, so you can read it for free. But the original, I have a copy of the original, and it sells for, I don't know, it's hard to find. It sells for a lot of money. It's a quick read showing astonishing and timely insight into the big universal problem that ails us. This is a book that demands to be resurrected and handed out to your friends and acquaintances in all walks of life. And so now we will go into the Occult Technology of Power. And it starts off like this. And we'll stop periodically for commentary. And if anybody in the chat room has any questions or would like to call in, of course, you're welcome to do so. I'll be checking the chat room every now and then while Kevin makes commentary. But continuing on. In this thin volume, you will find the transcripts of your initiation. Again, this is this elitist speaking to his son. Into the secrets of my empire. Read them again, not for the arcane knowledge which is now second nature to you, but in order to re-experience the shock and awe you felt 20 years ago when at age 30, the fabulous scope of my power was revealed to you by my trusted and now mostly departed advisors. Remember the surprise, to the point of disbelief, with which you beheld the invisibly delicate but invincible chains of deceit, confusion, or coercion with which we finance capitalists enslave this chaotic world. Remember the feats of will and strategy that have been required to retain our position. Then inspect your retinue carefully. Your heir must be equal to and eager for the task much as you were. Choose him carefully. As I lie here waiting for the end, I can afford to relish the thought. Our empire lasting forever as I never dared while in charge. My son, the time has arrived to make formal what you have confidently awaited for some years. Of all your brothers, sisters, and cousins, as well as the offspring of my close allies, I have chosen you to be heir to my empire. All the trust funds, foundations, and accounts through which my empire is controlled shall pass into your hands upon my retirement, All my alliances, understandings, and enmities with my handful of peers around the globe shall gradually become yours. Over the next 20 years, we shall collaborate closer and closer, you and I, until we finally act as one. For 10 years, you have toured my empire in a succession of managerial assignments and are now familiar with the outward operations of my crucial banking, foundation, governmental, and think tank organizations. Until now, my advisors and I have deflected your questions as to how and if my diverse operations and holdings, which seem autonomous and even contradictory, are integrated into an organic whole to serve the dynasty's interests. The fact that you asked these questions rejecting my carefully nurtured public image as an idle, coupon-clipping philanthropist was a major factor in the high esteem in which I hold you. Most of your competitors found puppet leadership in any one of my organizations so awesome and gratifying that they immediately eliminated themselves from the contest for the top position which you have won. Such men of limited vision are necessary for my success. They bend unconsciously to the subtle pressures to which I expose them. They can be led in any direction I choose by simple-minded rationalizations aimed at their vanity without being privy to my motives, which would be short-lived secrets in their undisciplined and envious minds. I want to make a comment here before we continue on, because a lot of people don't understand that the presidents that are paraded out before us, they're nothing but puppets on a string. They're not the true power or authority here in America. And that's why you had Obama, when he came to office, before he ever assumed the presidency, he promised to not support Wall Street, to go after the bankers, to hold accountable those that were crying for this huge, massive bailout. The economic revitalization bailout, the massive amount of money that the Bush administration scared everybody into supporting and passing. And they gave all that money to all these banks without them even having to account for any of it, to give any guidance, to increase lending. None of that was put on the banks before giving them these massive amounts of money. And so you had the same idiots that created the crisis, people like Timothy Geithner and Larry Summers, these kind of idiots that fail miserably but are elected again and again to positions of power because they are like David Rock or whoever this person just talked about, that they will bend to the will of their leaders. They're just puppets on a string. And that's why you have the Federal Reserve, which is one of the true powers here in this country, appointing idiots like Larry Summers and Timothy Geithner, and then you have President Obama approving them, the Senate approving them, and that's why also Ben Bernanke will be approved again for a second term. And he's the idiot that also engineered this massive Great Depression that we are going through. And I can guarantee you that the numbers of unemployment and homeless and people that have lost their jobs and lost their homes is underreported. Kevin, comment before we move on?
Yeah, you see that the nature of the beast. It doesn't matter what president we've had from, many terms in the past 20 to 30 years, if not more, than that these folks, people are now. The problem is we catch on after the fact because we always get engulfed in this. We are changed, the change, and then they see now. You see the people that supported Obama totally rejecting him because they're getting they're not getting what they thought they were going to get. I mean, Obama surrounded himself with most of the same cabinet members that the Bush administration had, and that they're the Wall Street lackeys, you might want to call them. It's the same crowd. It's the same good old boys that were there from the start. So you're not going to get any change, and we're not going to do that unless we break from the two-party, three-party paradigm that we've been in for a while. And for the folks who might have had the opportunity to watch the Tea Party last night and hear Mr. Farah speak, the founder and editor of the WorldNet Daily, we really need, the only power we have is to wake up, to stop thinking that these guys are going to represent us. It's nothing but the same cycle. And for us to get out of the spin cycle, we got to stand on the Constitution and the Constitution alone, Zen. You and I have had many conversations about this. Any of these guys that usurp the Constitution and that make a mockery of our Constitution and our Bill of Rights, get them out of there. We have to vote these people out. Now, that's not going to be an easy task, but you have to look at it. Humble yourself. Stop being so stubborn and saying, I'm a Democrat, I'm a Republican, I'm this, I'm that. Become literate in your Constitution and your Bill of Rights, and let these people know that when you put them in positions of power, hammer them with emails and letters, and let them know when they break every rule. That's what we, the people, are here to do. They're here to represent us, and they're representing nothing but their wallets. And the time has come. Even people who I talk to here, and I work for the school department, and a lot of people are starting to renege, and they say, Kevin, you were right. You were telling us all along that this is the same thing. The right and the left are the same. It's just all an act. And people are waking up. God's waking us up, Zen. So we need to stand up. If we're going to stem the tide of these evildoers, we need to get rid of them. And we need to get out there and vote. We need to create new parties, and we need to get motivated into what we're doing here and get out there and speak our voices and let them know. That is their enemy. You know it, and I know it. The enemy is knowledge. These guys now, and I don't want to sound negative here, but let me tell you that there's rumblings now of a new terror attack going to be launched upon America. And Alex Jones had it on a show. It was in the Senate and the House are talking about when they're interviewing these fellows in intelligence, that whenever you get the animal into the corner, he's going to react. So these guys are scared then, and when they're scared, they do things to get our minds off of the real issues, and they create things for us to be distracted, and they will use terror and they will use economic crashes to get us off their trail. They know we're onto them.
Absolutely. And, I would remind listeners too, the first show I did a long time ago here was the day, I believe it was the day after Obama assumed his presidency. And I decided that I needed to do a show because people don't read anymore. They don't read the articles that people write. And it's easier for people to listen to radio or to watch a video. And so I came on that in the initial show, and I told people that not to expect anything different, that when Obama came to office, that he is blood related to Bush, and he's blood related to Cheney, Al Gore. It's all in the family. There was not going to be anything different. I said in that show, I hope that there would be some kind of change, and that he would do something good, but I knew he was just nothing but a puppet on a string. Now remember the quote from the introduction of this show. The so-called left-right political spectrum is our creation. In fact, it accurately reflects our careful artificial polarization of the population on phony issues that prevents the issue of our power from arising in their minds. The left supports civil liberties and opposes economic or entrepreneurial liberty. The right supports economic liberty and opposes civil liberties. Of course, neither can exist fully, which is our goal. Without the other, we control the right-left conflict such that both forms of liberty are suppressed to the degree that we require. Our own liberty rests not on legal or moral rights, but on our control of the government, bureaucracy, and courts which apply the complex subjective regulations we dupe the public into supporting for our benefit. That's a quote from this particular book called The Occult Technology of Power. And so the false left-right paradigm, it's the same side, it's the same side of the same, two heads of the same coin. You know, it's the same thing. All right, so continuing on with this Occult Technology of Power.
Zen, I think it's important in that first couple paragraphs that you wrote on the opening of the Occult Book of Technology here, Power of Technology, the way that these men of high Illuminati rank work. If you see how they control, and we're seeing that today with all of these powerful men that we held in high esteem, your John Edwards and all these other supposed people, even Bill Clinton being caught in sex scandals, and he been caught in sex scandals, drug abuse. You see here where they say it, and they blatantly say it. Most of your competitors found puppet leadership in any one of my organizations so awesome. You see, people need to understand that Satan and his adepts know that man worships man. So as long as you keep him interested in things that are self-gratifying, because Satan knows man worships himself, and he uses that power against him. See, they say it right here. They found that their little niche in the puppet leadership that they're giving so awesome and gratifying that they immediately eliminate themselves from any contest in top positions. And they go on to say that such men of limited version are necessary for success. They bend unconsciously to subtle pressures which I expose them to, and can be led in any direction I choose. See, what people might be missing there is that they use subterfuge and coercion and blackmail to hold their puppets, whether they wake up or not, in control by this. So if you are a sex maniac, he'll say, "Hey, you don't want to cross me on this deal here, Mr. Edwards, because I'll bring out your sexual escapades through my controlled media, or if you try to come out and work on the right side here or go against my issues." You see how they operate. The true powers that be can even control those so-called people that we think are in power, and they do it through that, and they can destroy them and eliminate them just like a piece of garbage.
Absolutely, and I would advise listeners to check out the Franklin cover-up, because that exposes how the elites use child prostitutes to bring out pedophile. All these pedophiles, and there's a lot of them up there in political office, but they offer them children as sex toys and offer them drugs in order to get them in these positions, and then they photograph or videotape their behaviors to later use to blackmail them to get them to vote the way they want to. And Senator John DeCamp, who wrote that book, The Franklin Cover-Up, didn't believe these children at first, but he, in doing his research, that was the conclusion that he came about as well. There was even a documentary called The Conspiracy of Silence that was supposed to air on a big-time network that was squashed, that was canceled the day that it was supposed to air. It was even in all of the different magazines, like the TV Guide, as it was supposed to come on a particular day, and that particular program was squashed because it too exposes the underpinnings that Kevin was talking about. And you can find copies of that video online as well. It's called The Conspiracy of Silence, and how they use children to bring out pedophilic behaviors. Go ahead, Kevin.
It's very important for people to understand, and the politicians, and you can see how these politicians can be brought low. Then I got to tell you that many a good man has been brought low because they failed the fundamental teachings of of the Bible and of the 10 simple rules that our Father laid out for us that our Constitution is founded upon. Once they submit themselves and they're able to be controlled and manipulated through temptation and subvert their constitution of the country that the Father gave them the privilege to represent the people, once they're able by these corporate people and these people in positions of power that control the central banks and the world to be tempted and to once they vary from or stray away from the constitutional values and the precepts of the Bible and the Ten Commandments, you see they leave themselves open for coercion, blackmail, and total destruction. And that is what our forefathers were warning us about from day one. And God has been warning us about. That's what the Bible is all about. We go for our own selfish lust, greed, sex, money, drugs, whatever, material goods, whatever it is. When you are put in these positions, God, throughout the Scriptures, shows you how they bring these evil men down. And our country is going to be no different if you look at the corruption and the coercion and the blackmail and how our political system is just falling apart. If people can't see it, then their eyes are closed.
Absolutely. And Andromeda Lover in the chat room asked, so how do you bring these elites down? And I think you just answered her question partially in what you were talking about. But I would say to you, Andromeda, that you have to expose the behaviors. We have to vote out incumbents. You have to stand up for the truth, even though you risk being ridiculed by friends and families. That we have to stand on the side of the truth and stand up with the Lord. And that's that's one of the. And also, I would encourage people to run for office themselves.
I would say the first
go
thing.
Ahead.
Then I would say then the first thing. I'm sorry to interrupt you, brother Zen, but the first
No
thing that
problem at
I
all.
tell people to do is repent. As a nation, God is firing warning shots over our bows, folks. We're going to go into this, and we're going to get more and more detail to it, but get on your hands and knees and repent. Turn to the Lord and ask Him to save our country, to help stand up good men. Repent. He let other nations survive. He gave passes to other nations, but you have to turn to the Lord first. We're not doing that. We didn't take the warnings of 9/11, Columbine, and all of these other things that God's showing us, that we're not indestructible, or that we can be hit. Just like any other nation, we could be brought low. We're not the invincible people we think we are. We will be humbled whether we go to the cross, willingly or not. So that's the first thing. And then secondly, then I would agree with exactly what you said. We need to get involved.
Absolutely. And I know, trust me, people, I know that the voting machines are rigged, that that we don't know whether you pushing the button on that screen actually counts as a vote for whatever person you voted for. But still, that does not mean we cannot be involved. We have to be involved in the political process. We have to encourage others to be involved, and we have to use what little power we have remaining through the Constitution to do what we can to fight off this insanity. And everybody can see. I mean, that's why the whole Tea Party movement has begun. It has begun because people can see the insanity is just out of control. Let's continue on a little bit with the Occult Technology of Power, and then we'll do final commentary because we've got just 14 minutes remaining. I'll answer that here in just a minute, Anthony. Okay, continuing on. Most important in your selection as my successor, however, was your psychological nature, which has been faithfully reported to me over the years by my associates, many of whom have advanced psychological training. A man in my position must have total mastery over his emotions. All actions affecting the power of the dynasty must be taken on the basis of coldly reasoned power calculations if the dynasty is to survive and prosper at the expense of its subjects and rivals. All power is impossible to those whose pursuit is ruled by sentimentality, love, envy, power, lust, revenge, prejudice, hatred, justice, alcohol, drugs, or sexual desire. Sustained power is impossible to those who repress all their irrational longings into their subconscious, only to have them return in compulsive, out-of-control behavior that inevitably leads to their ruin. Although often clothed in the rationalizations of power, calculation, compulsive behavior is out-of-control behavior that inevitably leads to their ruin. Although often clothed in the rationalizations of power, calculation, compulsive behavior is at root the emotionalism of a frightened child desperately projecting his inner agony into a reality he is afraid of to understand and much less master. Although you now must begin to pursue it consciously, you have already displayed the alienation from your emotional nature that is so essential to achieving real worldly power. You must recognize your emotional nature as a primitive survival mechanism that was appropriate for the jungle and perhaps useful to common men, but useless for the tasks that confront us finance capitalists. Attachment to what cognitive dissonance spells disaster for us. Our emotional mechanism makes our lives worth living, but is no guide to the occult art of intrigue. So, continue to gratify your senses and emotions fully at your leisure. As long as the empire prospers, you will have the resources to indulge in systemic gratification, which will leave your irrational urges sated and therefore powerless. You will never be in the unenviable position of the middle-class strivers who must, from lack of resources, repress their emotional natures if they are to attain any power, whatever during their lives. Typically, they end up taking their pleasure from the victories and cruelties of their struggle. Thus, their end ceases to be power, and they eventually defeat themselves with reckless behavior in pursuit of dominant thrills. In this particular passage, I think it's clear that they are talking about being cold-blooded, non-emotional, and having no love or compassion for humanity or for the world, only for the lust of power and complete control, domination of humanity and its resources through world government and through this financial empire that has stretched its tentacles across the world as the New World Order. Kevin, we got 9 minutes. I'm going to get you to comment on this, and then we'll answer something.
I'll make it real quick, Zen. What you hit the nail on the head. That's exactly what these last couple paragraphs imbued in this adept, this initiate, as we might speak. And it's funny how they call this is an initiation. I want to remind people this is an initiation. What we're describing here in these first opening paragraphs of the occult technology of power. So this adept is being trained that although he's still somewhat human, that these occult powers and these supernatural beings that the Illuminati will find later channel, that they know that there are going to be some emotions that this human being will feel through love, envy, power. But don't let this bother you. Just coldly and calculatingly stick to the plan that we're describing to you here, your agenda for our total domination of the world. And by all means, go ahead and engage in your lusts and all of your, all of your sick, perverse things that you want to do, and that you might be, interested in doing. And don't worry about the consequences. We got your back, and we'll keep it under, wraps as long as, and we've got plenty of, whatever you need here. But just keep it quiet and don't do it out in public. We'll do it in our own circles, and we'll keep everything under wraps. As long as you behave and stick to the plan, nobody will be the wiser. Aleister Crowley said it best, do as they will is the whole of the law. And that's what these people believe. They are machines. They are cold, calculating, no emotional machines. And that's why they have no love for humanity. And there is one cherub, a fallen cherub, that has a very great hatred who leads these particular people, and his name is Lucifer or Satan. And you will see this as we get further and further into this book.
Absolutely. And I would also recommend to the readers to check out a book written by John Perkins called The Economic Hitman, because he was involved at the highest levels with the CIA, with the NSA, and with utilizing power and drugs and money to corrupt different world leaders so that they would oppress their people and commit atrocities against their populations. And it's always been that way. And they utilize, like Kevin said, drugs, perverse behaviors, and sexual, all kind of sexual perversions, things that we cannot even understand. The elites are into. They're trafficking children. A lot of them are pedophiles. A lot of them do a lot of crazy, insane things. The drinking of blood, the eating of flesh, all these different things that seem just insane are behaviors that many of the elitists are involved in. And they are definitely, at the highest levels, involved in a lot of occultic, satanic type rituals, which, take place in all kind of abominable occurrence. And so, yeah, Kevin's right. The things that are being done, the things that these people are involved in, that's why they can plan the purposeful depopulation of the planet, which is one of the agendas of the New World Order. And I know this is hard to swallow, especially for those of you that are not familiar with any of the things that we're talking about, and that all of this seems new to you. They do have a plan. It's written on the Georgia Guidestones right here in Georgia where I live. The first priority is to degrade humanity and to depopulate the planet into a manageable size. They want to shed the population from 8 billion to 500 million, what they consider manageable to be as a servant class, a second-class citizen to serve the elite. Kevin, comment on that?
Zen, it's a very sad commentary. I always tell people the ultimate red flag is when you're reading these writings is to always remember to revert to the scriptures, and you can see the evil for what it is if you just revert back to those commandments. And you see in just the opening statements that we've read here that everything that this gentleman is being taught and all that this particular teachers believe in are in direct opposition to the Ten Commandments, the Constitution, and the rule of law as they say they project it out to the public. It's what they say they believe in, they don't. What they say they're going to do, they don't. And you could just see that Satan works in reverse of everything that is holy. So he corrupts it, and these are corrupters of mankind here, working the iniquity through their powerful cherub, who they worship, Lucifer.
Absolutely, and I would a quote from Benjamin Disraeli: "The world is governed by very different personages from what is imagined by those who are not behind the scenes." And as Kevin was talking about the quote from Aleister Crowley, "Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law," and that's exactly what these Illuminati, global elitists, Bilderberger, world government elite do. They serve themselves. They serve their own selfish, elitist interests. They care nothing for humanity or the public. They care nothing about the common good of the people. And that's why things are in such disarray. And that's also another thing people don't understand. The United Nations, the organization that is called on to serve as a organization for the benefit of the world, that is a corrupt organization which only serves the elitist agenda, and they are a large part of the world government that will oppress the people of the world. And so don't look to the United Nations for help, and realize that the United Nations is a corrupt organization. And with that, I would encourage, we've got 90 seconds left, Kevin. I want to thank you again for joining me and for always bringing your just awesome commentary and wonderful discernment to the show. I pray for all of you out there, and I pray for your families, and I pray that you come to your own discernment on all these things. Again, please do not believe anything we say. Go out there, do your own homework, do your own research, prove these things for yourself. Look up this Occult Technology of Power. It's a quick read. I think it's maybe 50 or 60 pages. You can read it in one day. This book will open your eyes up to those things that are happening around us right now. We'll continue this dialogue next week as Kevin and I get into the Protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion, which is another document that is connected to and associated to all of these world events where we're moving towards world government, or what people know as the New World Order. And with that, thank you. And Kevin, I'll talk to you soon, brother. Appreciate you. And we'll see everybody next week. Thank everybody in the chat room. Andromeda, we appreciate your commentary and hope to see you again soon. Take care, everyone. God bless.